I've always wanted to ask why Dad changed his name from Rubin to Robin, and I know that there are several versions of these stories.
Well, he first his uncle persuaded him to do it. If you want to be in academia, you can't have the name Reuben. Those names are all taken up, and you should change your name. You should change it to Robin. They're only changing one letter, and he was behind that all the time. And finally, Fred agreed to do so. The uncle, why can't I think of his name all of a sudden?
Bert Aginsky.
I don't know whether he changed his name around the time that he was thinking of enlisting into the Navy, but one of the reasons why he thought he'd be able to get into the Navy as an officer is that he had a Protestant-sounding name, like Robin, because he heard that the naval recruiting was only they weren't taking Jews. So, but he had changed his name. He went down for the interview. He wanted to get into naval intelligence. He had all these recommendations. But in the course of the interview, they asked him what his mother's maiden name was, and he decided not to lie, and he said Goldberg. And that was the end. They never called him again.
It's a common story. Well, I'm glad he didn't get into the Navy. He didn't like the whole idea of putting his head underwater.
Right, but he liked boats.
What?
He liked boats.
He liked boats, yes. But he didn't get into the Navy, and he enlisted as just a regular enlistee, and, he already had his PhD. He hadn't had it granted yet, but he had all the requirements when he was called out. And he knew that he was told that he met the requirements, and that he had to do A, B, and C, which were the easy part. And when they interviewed him, he told them that, and they checked on it, and he stood very high, and there was no doubt that he was going to be sent to officers' candidate school, so they sent him to officers' candidate school.
In the beginning, when he was first in the Army, and he did boot camp in Alabama, and then they sent him to England to be a military policeman.
Yeah.
And then there he was picked to go to officer candidate school, so they sent him back to the U.S., where he did the officer candidate training, and then he was sent with a combat troop to the Battle of the Bulge.
And he had a very bad time of it, because not only did he have this really scary wound with his hand, with the Army saying to him, that's too bad to fix, and your hand's got to be partially amputated. So that's where Abe showed his good colors. He did some research, and he found the best and the most well-known hand surgeon, who he sent your father to visit. And that was very good, because this guy not only was this very famed hand surgeon, but he had a son who had a wound very similar to Dad's. And he said, well, your son, Mr. Rubin, has to be... it's a series of very serious operations, and he's got to stick with it. And if he does, they can fix his hand so it'll be partially operative, which is exactly what happened. And he never had an easy time with that hand, and it took him a year to learn how to tie his tie with one hand. But he was, whatever else you might say to it, he was a real stick-to-itive guy. And he stick to it until he could tie his tie with one hand. And he was very brave and very confident that he could do this, and he did it.